The moon hung low over the mining outpost, cold and lifeless, yet alive with distant echoes of machines and alarms. Riven Holt wiped sweat from his brow, adjusting the heavy power pack on his back. The day had been long, full of repairs and recalibrations, nothing heroic or exciting. But now, in the sudden silence of the evening shift, something felt wrong. A faint shriek pierced the air, sharp and urgent, like nothing he had ever heard before. Riven froze, his heart thudding in his chest. It was coming from the cargo tunnels below. He should have stayed put. He should have called security. But he didn't. Some instinct, something deeper than thought, pulled him toward the noise. His boots clanged against metal grates as he ran down the narrow walkway, past crates and equipment, the smell of hot circuitry and oil heavy in the air. Then came the gunfire. Sharp, bright flashes of light tore through the dim corridor, accompanied by the whine of energy bolts slicing the metal walls. Sparks flew and the floor shuddered beneath him. Riven saw it then. A tiny creature, no bigger than a cat, huddled behind a toppled crate. It had wings like thin sheets of amber, shimmering even in the harsh light. Its eyes were wide, terrified, and fixated on the shooters. The little dragon shook, its cries echoing off the walls. The raiders were close, their armored boots pounding toward it. Without thinking, Riven threw himself over the hatchling, the bullets shredding the metal floor around him. Pain lanced through his back as one shot grazed his shoulder, another sparked across his arm. His skin burned, but strangely, it did not tear. It felt alive, as if it was trying to push the fire away from him. The dragon clung to him, trembling. Its small body pressed against his chest, wings flaring slightly, trying to shield itself. Riven's mind raced, though his body moved on pure instinct. He rolled to the side just as another volley struck the crate, sending splinters flying. He felt something strange under his hands, his skin, the part the bullets had grazed, hardened almost like armor. A faint, golden shimmer spread along his forearm. He blinked, unable to comprehend what was happening, but there was no time. The raiders were advancing. "Get out of here, you little freak," one of the attackers shouted. Their voices were cold, mechanical, without hesitation. They weren't looking for negotiation. They wanted the creature. They wanted it dead or captured. Riven rolled again, dragging the hatchling behind him as he slid down a narrow chute toward the maintenance level. Sparks rained from damaged conduits overhead, and the lights flickered, casting shadows that seemed to chase them. He felt the little dragon nuzzle his neck, its warmth strange but comforting against the cold metal. Somehow, against all odds, they survived the first attack. The raiders paused, their scanners picking up nothing on Riven, only static interference where he crouched behind a control panel. The hatchling chirped softly, as if asking if they were safe. Riven panted, his chest heaving, but he nodded, though he doubted it could understand him. His hands traced over his arms again. The scales, or whatever they were, spread across his skin in delicate, irregular patterns. They glimmered faintly in the emergency lights, golden against the pale skin of his arms. He flexed his fingers. The movement was smooth, easy, but the strength, it felt different. He realized then that the bullets hadn't just failed to hurt him, they had triggered something inside him. Some change, some bond. He glanced down at the hatchling. Its wings fluttered, delicate and fragile, but it wasn't shaking anymore. Somehow, he had saved it. Somehow, it had chosen him. Outside, the sounds of chaos were fading. The raiders retreated, at least for now, confused by the interference and the unexpected resistance. Riven pushed himself up, still holding the hatchling tightly. The little dragon raised its head, looking around with intelligent, shining eyes. Riven felt an odd connection, a warmth that spread from his chest to his arms. He did not understand it, not yet, but he knew this creature was no ordinary animal. It was alive, and it was powerful in a way the galaxy had not imagined. He reached the maintenance bay, sliding behind a row of crates. The emergency lights reflected off his arms, revealing the strange, glimmering scales spreading further. He could feel them moving subtly, responding to his heartbeat. The dragon nestled against him, small but fearless now, trusting him completely. Riven did not think about what would come next. He only knew one thing: he could not let the hatchling fall into anyone's hands. He would protect it, whatever it cost him. Even if he did not fully understand the changes in his body, even if the pain returned, he would not let it die. The instinct to shield, to sacrifice, burned stronger than fear. For a moment, the chaos outside the walls seemed distant. Inside that small bay, it was only him and the dragon, two unlikely survivors in a universe that had never counted on humans in this way. Sparks from the damaged conduits flickered across the room, illuminating the scales creeping up his arms like a living map of his courage. And the little dragon chirped again, soft but certain, as if confirming a bond that went deeper than words. Riven Holt, a simple maintenance worker, had become a shield. Not just for a creature the galaxy hunted, but perhaps for something much greater. And as the shadows of the outpost stretched long and uncertain, a faint glow ran across his skin, a promise that this night would change everything, forever. The first gunfire had fallen. The first bond had formed. And Riven had no idea how far the change would go. Riven Holt sat in the shadows of the maintenance bay, the tiny dragon still pressed against his chest. Its wings were folded, its body small and fragile, yet there was a strange warmth radiating from it. He stared at the creature, trying to understand what it was. He had never seen anything like it. The scales on his arms glimmered softly, and he could feel them pulse with a life of their own. Somehow, they responded to the dragon's presence, as if recognizing a bond he did not yet fully understand. The hatchling lifted its head, its bright eyes locking onto his. Riven could swear it looked at him not like an animal, but like a being that understood more than any human should. He reached out, gently stroking its head, careful not to frighten it. Its small wings fluttered in response, and a soft, almost musical chirp escaped its throat. Riven realized that it was trying to communicate, though he had no idea how. He needed answers. He moved carefully through the empty hallways of the outpost, clutching the dragon. Every sensor he passed flickered and malfunctioned, as if something about the creature, or perhaps about him, disrupted the technology. The outpost had been abandoned for months, yet the alarms had triggered automatically when the raiders attacked. Now, even in quiet, the system seemed unsettled. Riven felt a strange connection between the hatchling and the failing machines, though he could not explain it. In a secluded corner of the outpost, he found an old terminal with a cracked screen. Dust covered the keyboard, and the interface was slow to respond. Riven typed carefully, searching for any record of the creature he carried. He found a series of encrypted files, mostly ignored for decades. One phrase caught his attention: Drakeborn Sentinel. The files described creatures designed as guardians of ancient star roots. They were engineered to survive harsh environments, to bond with a compatible being, and to defend against threats too powerful for normal species. They were intelligent, resilient, and rare. Riven's heart raced. This tiny hatchling was one of them, and the galaxy believed the Drakeborn were extinct. Yet here it was, alive and trembling in his arms. Riven's mind spun. Why had it chosen him? He was no hero, no soldier, just a maintenance worker. And yet, the moment the bullets had fallen, something inside him had changed. The scales spreading across his arms pulsed when he held the dragon, and he realized the connection ran deeper than protection. It was something biological, instinctual. The Drakeborn had recognized him, not as a threat, but as a guardian. The sound of engines outside made him tense. The raiders had not gone far. They were searching, scanning for signs of life. If they found him with the hatchling, they would not hesitate to kill him again, or worse, capture the creature. Riven knew he could not stay. He had to move the hatchling somewhere safe, somewhere hidden from everyone who wanted it for power or profit. He ducked through maintenance tunnels, careful not to trigger any alarms. The dragon chirped softly, wings brushing against his chest. He could feel its heartbeat in time with his own. Riven understood now, the Drakeborn were not just rare, they were vital. The files hinted at their energy being capable of powering entire fleets, or even weapons that could dominate systems. That explained why the raiders had risked so much to find one. Hours passed, and Riven finally found a sealed storage bay, long unused, filled with crates and supplies. He placed the hatchling down gently. It looked up at him, tiny eyes glowing in the dim light. He knelt beside it, tracing the outline of its wings. The creature shivered but did not retreat. Riven's skin glimmered faintly in the shadows, the scales spreading further as if the dragon's presence encouraged the change. He flexed his fingers and felt strength he had never known before. Somehow, shielding this creature had awakened something inside him. Riven knew the galaxy would not stop hunting them. Every official, every faction, would see the Drakeborn as a tool, a weapon, or a prize. He had to understand the creature, learn its ways, and protect it until he could find a place where it would be safe. He opened the files again, reading slowly. The Drakeborn were capable of linking with a human's nervous system in rare circumstances, enhancing reflexes, speed, and resilience. The bond could not be forced, it had to be chosen. That meant the galaxy's technology and power could not replicate what had happened. Only Riven had earned it. Night fell over the moon's surface. The lights of distant stars flickered through the outpost's damaged windows. Riven leaned back against a crate, watching the hatchling curl against his chest. It was small, vulnerable, yet it carried the weight of something much larger than either of them. For a moment, he allowed himself to imagine a life where the galaxy knew the Drakeborn were alive, but where humans could protect them, not exploit them. The silence was broken by a distant hum, a signal of incoming ships. Riven's pulse quickened. The raiders were returning, or perhaps another faction had picked up the hatchling's trail. He looked at the little creature, and for the first time, he felt a surge of determination that went beyond fear. He would not let them take it. He would fight, not with weapons, but with the bond they shared. Somehow, the change inside him would be enough. Somehow, the galaxy would see that the human standing before them was no ordinary person. The hatchling chirped again, tiny wings fluttering. Its gaze was steady, almost commanding. Riven understood, it was teaching him, showing him that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to stand between danger and those who could not defend themselves. He flexed his new, hardened hands and felt the strange warmth of the scales along his arms. The protection was not just for him, it was for the creature, for every life the galaxy might try to crush for power. Riven rose, the hatchling in his arms, and stepped toward the exit of the storage bay. The engines grew louder, closer. He could feel the bond strengthening, subtle pulses through his chest and arms, a rhythm that matched the dragon's heartbeat. It was a warning, a guide, a promise. They would survive, but only if he trusted the instincts the hatchling had awakened inside him. The galaxy had hunted these creatures for centuries, thinking them lost, thinking them weak. But Riven understood now that the Drakeborn were not just guardians of star roots, they were guardians of life itself. And with the bond he shared with this tiny dragon, he had become part of something far greater than any human or machine could control. He took a deep breath and stepped into the corridor, each footfall careful but firm. The shadows of the outpost seemed to bend around them, as if acknowledging their presence. Riven Holt, a simple maintenance worker, and Emberlin, the last Drakeborn hatchling, were now running not just for survival, but for the beginning of a story the galaxy had never expected. And Riven could feel, deep in his chest, that no force in the stars would stop him from protecting this tiny life. Riven Holt moved carefully through the quiet corridors of the mining outpost, carrying Emberlin close to his chest. The tiny dragon's wings beat softly against his arms, as if testing the limits of its new world. The strange warmth along Riven's skin pulsed, and the golden scales had spread from his arms to his shoulders. Each movement felt different now, stronger, faster, yet natural. He flexed his fingers and felt a resilience he had never known, as if his body itself had become a shield. He did not understand it yet, but he knew one thing, he had changed in a way that could not be undone. The sound of footsteps echoed in the hall ahead. Riven froze, pressing Emberlin closer. He could hear the mechanical hum of scanners and the firm boots of soldiers. Galactic authorities had arrived. He knew their type, they were precise, trained, and would not hesitate to take what they wanted. The files he had found earlier had warned him, the Drakeborn were valuable beyond measure, and those who hunted them saw life only as profit. Riven's pulse quickened, but he did not panic. He had Emberlin, and that was enough for now. The corridor lights flickered, throwing shadows that danced across the walls. As the soldiers came into view, Riven felt the scales along his arms stiffen, glowing faintly in the dim light. He did not move. He only waited. When they raised their scanners, the devices sparked and beeped in confusion. Riven realized the bond between him and Emberlin was not just emotional, it was physical. Their connection disrupted technology, confused systems, and seemed to shield them in ways no weapon could touch. "Drop it," a voice commanded. Commander Vila Strix, tall and cold-eyed, stepped forward. His armor reflected the dim lights of the outpost. "That creature belongs to the Galactic Authority. Surrender it now, or you will be destroyed." Riven shook his head, his voice calm but firm. "It's not yours. It's not a weapon. It's alive." Vila's eyes narrowed. "You don't understand its value. You could be risking your life." "I know exactly what I'm risking," Riven interrupted. "And I will not let you take it." The soldiers advanced. Riven felt the scales along his arms respond instantly, hardening further. The golden patterns rippled across his skin, covering his chest and back as though a living armor was forming. The first energy blast hit his arm and bounced harmlessly off, sparking against the scales. Riven did not flinch. He only held Emberlin tighter, letting the bond guide him. Each step he took was precise, instinctive, stronger than any human reflex. The attackers moved cautiously, confused by a human who should have been defenseless but was clearly anything but. Emberlin chirped, a sharp, commanding note. The tiny dragon flapped its wings, sending small arcs of energy toward the floor. Sparks danced around them, harmless but mesmerizing. Riven realized the hatchling was amplifying the bond, signaling him, teaching him. His heart raced, but he felt clarity. This change was not temporary. The bond was permanent. His body had adapted, his instincts sharpened, and there was no returning to the way he had been before the bullets fell. Vila raised a hand, signaling the soldiers to attack again. The blast hit Riven squarely in the chest, but it did not pierce him. The energy dispersed along the scales, harmlessly redirected to the floor. Emberlin's eyes glowed, and Riven felt a surge of power, not fear, not anger, but pure determination. He moved, stepping forward, not to strike, but to shield the tiny dragon. Each movement was fluid, stronger than any human should have been. Every step he took left a faint shimmer on the ground, a reminder that the change within him was real. The soldiers hesitated. Vila's voice cut through the tension. "It's impossible. Humans can't." Riven held up a hand, stopping even the smallest advance. His voice was steady, carrying the weight of something deeper than words. "I won't fight you. I only protect what's alive. You cannot take it." The commander's face darkened, realizing that Riven was no ordinary human. The bond was clear. The scales, the reflexes, the calm strength, it all spoke of something the galaxy had never measured or tested. Humans had been underestimated for centuries, believed weak, compliant, controllable. But here was proof that one human, acting without thought of power or reward, could change the rules entirely. Riven felt Emberlin stir in his arms, sensing his resolve. The hatchling chirped again, louder this time, and sparks of energy pulsed from its body. Riven's skin responded, glowing and shifting, a living extension of the dragon's will. Together, they were no longer just a human and a hatchling, they were a single force, bonded in defense. The soldiers took a step back, scanning their readouts in disbelief. Vila clenched his fists, fury and disbelief battling in his eyes. "You cannot stop the authority. That creature is not meant for you." Riven shook his head. "You are wrong. It is meant for life. And I am meant to protect it." He did not move to attack. He simply stood, letting the scales along his body glow, letting Emberlin's energy pulse through him. The corridor seemed to hum, a subtle vibration that ran along the metal floors, disrupting scanners and sensors alike. For a moment, the galaxy's finest soldiers could do nothing but stare at a human who had become a shield by choice, not by design. The hatchling shifted, pressing its small body against Riven's chest. Its wings fluttered, brushing along his neck and shoulders. Riven could feel the bond intensifying, spreading from his chest to his back, his arms, his legs. The scales rippled like water, alive, protective, unbreakable. He realized then that the change was no accident. The Drakeborn had chosen him, and in doing so, it had awakened something humanity had never shown before, the ability to evolve through empathy, through instinct, through courage. Vila stepped back, signaling the soldiers to fall in line. They were trained to obey, but even they could sense the impossible before them. Riven did not feel pride. He only felt purpose. The tiny dragon had survived, and through their bond, he had become something the galaxy could not control. Something permanent. The first attack was over. The outpost fell silent again, except for the faint hum of energy from the hatchling. Riven lowered his arms slightly, feeling the scales settle but not fade. He looked down at Emberlin, and the tiny dragon chirped softly, wings brushing against him, a small but perfect gesture of trust. He understood now that nothing would ever be the same. The change within him could not be reversed. His body, his instincts, his very being had adapted to protect something innocent, something rare, something the galaxy had hunted for centuries. He was no longer just a human. He was a guardian. And together, they would face whatever the stars sent next. For the first time, Riven smiled, calm but certain. The galaxy had hunted for centuries, but it had never expected a human to protect a Drakeborn. And it would never forget what they could do together. Rivenholt moved through the long, dim corridors of the mining outpost, Emberlin pressed carefully against his chest. The tiny dragon's wings twitched occasionally, sending small ripples of energy across his skin. The scales had spread further now, covering his arms, shoulders, and part of his chest. Each pulse of the dragon's heartbeat seemed to echo through him, a rhythm he had learned to follow instinctively. He knew the authorities would not leave him alone, and he was right. Sensors flickered again, and the hum of approaching ships grew louder. Commander Vila Strix had returned, this time with more soldiers. Their steps were deliberate, their scanners precise, but Riven felt calm. He did not need to fight with weapons. The bond he shared with Embelin was stronger than any gun, stronger than any armor. It was a living connection, something no technology could break. He rounded a corner and found himself in the central atrium of the outpost. The lights flickered above, casting long, uncertain shadows. Rivenholt, Vila's voice rang out, sharp and controlled. You cannot keep it. Surrender the Drake-born hatchling immediately. You are violating the authority's command. Riven shook his head. It's not yours to command. It's alive. It's not a weapon. It belongs to no one but itself. Vila's face hardened. You do not understand its value. The Drake-born energy can power fleets, weapons, entire colonies. This is bigger than you, than one human. Riven took a deep breath. He felt the warmth of Embelin pressing against him, and he realized the truth of what the files had hinted at. The Drake-born were not just bioengineered creatures, they were sentinels. They bonded with beings capable of self-sacrifice without expectation of reward. The galaxy had tested others for centuries and failed. But humans? Humans were not expected to succeed. He stepped forward slightly, feeling the scales along his arms ripple in response to the dragon's presence. I understand perfectly. That's why it will not leave me. No one can force it, and no one can use it for power while I am here. The soldiers hesitated, scanning his body, scanning Embelin. Each step they took was measured, uncertain. The bond between human and dragon disrupted their instruments, the readings inconsistent, confused. Vila's eyes narrowed as he realized that Riven was no ordinary human. His strength, his reflexes, the living armor of scales, it all defied expectation. Do you think you can stand against the authority? Vila demanded. You are only one human. We have the technology. We have numbers. You cannot protect it forever. Riven shook his head. I am not protecting it because I am strong. I am protecting it because I am human. And that is something you cannot measure, or break, or control. He felt Embelin stir, sensing his resolve. The tiny dragon chirped sharply, sending another pulse through him. The scales along his chest and back shimmered as if alive, spreading in patterns that seemed to map his determination. He realized something important: the change in his body was permanent. It had been triggered by choice, by instinct, by his willingness to stand between danger and the defenseless. No technology, no force, no authority could reverse it. The soldiers advanced cautiously. Each step was met with Riven's calm, measured movements. He did not attack. He did not strike. He only positioned himself between the soldiers and Embelin. Each time a blast of energy hit him, the scales absorbed it, rippling across his body and protecting both him and the hatchling. The weapons seemed useless. The authority's best soldiers could not touch them. Vila's voice rose in frustration. You are defying centuries of law, and for what? A creature that should belong to the galaxy? Riven's gaze was steady. It belongs to life itself, not the galaxy. I am its choice. You cannot force it to obey you. You cannot own what does not want to be owned. A strange silence fell across the atrium. The soldiers looked at each other, uncertainty spreading among them. They had been trained to obey orders, to claim what they were told to take. But now, they saw something they had never encountered: a human who could not be measured, a bond that could not be broken, a determination that could not be forced. Riven took a step forward, Embelin pressed firmly to his chest. He could feel the bond pulsating, spreading through his arms, his chest, his back. The tiny dragon's energy flowed through him, amplifying his instincts, guiding his movements. He felt more than strength, he felt clarity, purpose, and a connection that went beyond fear or survival. He was a guardian, and no one could take that from him. Vila's face darkened. He raised his hand to signal another attack, but the soldiers hesitated. Their instruments failed again, showing nothing but static readings where Riven and Embelin stood. The scales on Riven's arms glowed faintly, shimmering with a light that seemed to come from within. Every movement of the tiny dragon reinforced the change in him, a change that could not be undone. Riven spoke again, voice calm but firm. I do not fight you because I want power. I do not fight you because I am stronger. I fight because it is right. And right cannot be forced or bought or sold. Humans protect life. That is who we are. The soldiers froze, realizing that orders, weapons, and technology were useless here. The bond between Riven and Embelin was not just biological, it was moral, instinctual, unbreakable. The authority had always sought to control, to claim, to measure value in currency or weaponry. But humans? Humans acted by choice, by empathy, by courage. And in that, they were unpredictable. Riven took a final step forward, letting the tiny dragon rest its head against his chest. The scales along his arms and shoulders glimmered brighter, spreading in intricate patterns. The authority could not understand it, could not control it, could not own it. He felt a calm certainty wash over him. The bond, the change, the protection, it was permanent. Vila lowered his hand slightly, frustration and disbelief etched across his face. The soldiers looked uncertain, trapped by their own instruments and instincts. Riven did not gloat. He only held Embelin, steady, unwavering. He had made his choice. He had refused ownership, refused control, refused the power the galaxy offered. He had chosen life. And that choice had changed everything. For a moment, the atrium was silent except for the soft hum of Embelin's wings and the faint shimmer of scales across Riven's skin. They were no longer just a human and a hatchling. They were a force the galaxy had never anticipated, a bond that could not be broken, a reminder that life, courage, and empathy were stronger than any law or weapon. Riven Holt, standing firm with Embelin pressed to his chest, had become more than human. He had become a guardian. And the galaxy, for all its power, had no choice but to recognize it. Riven Holt moved carefully through the outpost corridors, Embelin snug against his chest. Outside, the stars shone cold and distant, but inside, a quiet warmth hummed between them. The tiny dragon had grown calm, its wings folded, eyes glowing softly. The scales on Riven's arms and chest shimmered faintly in the dim light, a living sign of the bond they shared. He understood now that the change inside him was permanent, that he could never go back to being just a human. And he did not want to. The galaxy had expected humans to bend, to obey, to give in when confronted with power far greater than themselves. But Riven was learning something far more important. Humans could do things no one had predicted. They could protect. They could choose life over control. They could stand in the way of the strongest forces in the universe and refuse to yield, not because they sought glory, but because it was right. Riven reached the hangar bay, hidden in the farthest corner of the outpost. He had scavenged parts over the past hours, making a small, unregistered ship capable of travel beyond the moon. It would not be fast, it would not be armed, but it would be theirs. Embelin chirped softly, as if approving the effort. Riven felt her energy ripple through him, strengthening the strange scales along his arms. He had grown stronger, faster, and more aware of everything around him, yet his mind remained calm. As he prepared the ship for departure, Riven's thoughts turned to the galaxy itself. For centuries, it had hunted the Drakeborn, thinking them extinct, thinking them vulnerable. Entire fleets, powerful governments, and secret agencies had sought to control them, to weaponize them. And yet here was a human, simple, unarmed, who had changed the rules simply by standing in the right place at the right time and choosing to protect life. The hangar doors opened slowly, revealing the black expanse of space beyond. Stars streaked in the distance, and the hum of distant ships could be heard. Riven took a deep breath and adjusted Embelin in his arms. The tiny dragon chirped sharply, and Riven realized she was signaling him. Not out of fear, but guidance. Her instincts were teaching him, guiding him across the unknown. He smiled faintly, understanding for the first time that they were not just escaping, they were beginning something new. The engines roared to life, small but steady, and the ship lifted off. Riven watched the moon shrink below him, the outpost fading from view. Behind him, he imagined the galaxy's authorities, scanning, hunting, and yet unable to comprehend what had happened. They had never considered a human could be more than a simple worker, a soldier, or a tool. They had never imagined that humans could evolve, not through technology or force, but through choice and empathy. Hours passed in quiet flight. Embelin rested, wings folded, eyes occasionally opening to glance at him. The scales on Riven's arms had settled, but they still glimmered faintly, a reminder of the bond that had awakened in the heat of gunfire. He flexed his fingers and felt strength, speed, and resilience that no machine could replicate. He had become a guardian not because of training or design, but because he had chosen to protect what was defenseless. Riven thought about the countless humans across the stars, the ones the galaxy had underestimated, the ones no one thought capable of greatness. He realized that they shared something all beings could not understand. Humans did not act out of duty or obligation. Humans acted out of will, empathy, and courage. That was why he had survived, why Embelin had lived, and why their bond had awakened something extraordinary. In the distance, old star roots stirred. Hidden beacons, long thought dead, flickered back to life. They responded to Embelin's energy, recognizing the presence of a bond the galaxy had forgotten. Riven did not fully understand it, but he felt the shift, a subtle pull guiding their course. He realized that the Drakeborn had been waiting not just for survival, but for someone worthy. And humans, the galaxy's underestimated species, had proven themselves. A faint signal appeared on the ship's console, a simple alert that had been dormant for centuries. Riven tapped it, and a wave of information flooded the system. Maps of star routes, hidden outposts, and ancient guardian signals all lit up. The galaxy had designed these defenses for beings it considered superior, but the Drakeborn had awakened them for one species, humans. Emberlin chirped again, and Riven felt the connection strengthen. He realized that their journey was only beginning. They were not just surviving, they were reshaping the galaxy's understanding. Authority, power, and numbers meant nothing when faced with the bond between human and Drakeborn. The galaxy would learn that life, courage, and empathy could not be measured, could not be controlled, and could not be broken. The first human-Drakeborn bond had rewritten history in its own quiet way. Riven looked down at Emberlin, tiny and perfect, and felt a surge of pride, not for himself, but for what humans could do. The galaxy would see humans differently now. They would learn that humans could stand as guardians, protect what was weak, and change outcomes simply by acting with heart and will. Riven adjusted the ship's course, heading toward an uncharted system where they could rest and learn. The stars stretched endlessly before them, cold but full of possibility. He knew the galaxy would not stop hunting, not immediately, but that no force could undo what had begun. A human had chosen to protect a Drakeborn, and in doing so, had awakened something the stars had never seen. The tiny dragon nestled against his chest, wings brushing his neck lightly. Riven smiled faintly, feeling the steady pulse of energy between them. They were a team now, bonded by more than chance, more than survival, they were bound by choice and courage. The galaxy would remember. It could not ignore what humans could do when they refused to bend, refused to kneel, and refused to give up what mattered. As the ship drifted into the deep black of space, Rivenholt's skin shimmered faintly in the soft light of distant stars. Emberlin's eyes glowed, and together, they moved forward, not as prey, not as fugitives, but as guardians. The galaxy would learn that humans were more than it had ever expected. And through their bond, that lesson would be written among the stars. The journey was just beginning, but the first truth was clear: humans could protect life in ways the galaxy had never imagined, and they would never forget it.